Hi there, I'm just doing a very quick study of a magnolia flower in this little clip. It's not a full-blown painting, I'm doing it because I want to get my colours right, ready for my class on Friday. So I like to just do a little test part of whatever my subject is before the class, so that I've got all my colour mixes worked out and everything. So I'm just wetting the paper. This paper is ash, 100% cotton rag, £90. Also, you can call it 200 GSM, whichever measurement you're using. And it's hot pressed. Lovely smooth surface. So I'm just switching brushes now because I want to wet this area and it's quite small. In fact, that brush is a bit dirty. Okay. Make sure your brushes are clean. Don't do as I do and put a slightly dirty wash on there. So I'm wetting down into the sort of like bud that's joined to the twig, that's joined to the branch, just so the colours will flow in together a bit more softly. So I just wanted to have a nice sheen on there. In a minute, I'll tip the board now actually. If I zoom out. There, can you see that sort of grey? It looks grey. Well, that's actually because there's a bit of a sheen on there. There it is. It's hard to pick it up. So that's the sort of sheen that you need on there before you drop your watercolour washes on, so that you get a soft edge. Okay. So the colours I'm going to use are some brilliant purple. It's by the German brand Schminke. Lovely brilliant purple. I think Permanent Rose by Winsor Newton. Let's try it. I haven't got any. Permanent Rose is similar. It's a bit dirty there. Quite sort of similar in colour. But my class haven't got this on their palette, so I'm going to stick with Brilliant Purple for now. And I'll use some Permanent Magenta as well for the darker areas near where the buds hold on to the twig, where it's a lot darker and in shadow. And opposite these pinks and purples on the colour wheel, roughly, is sap green. So I'll be dragging a little bit of that in when necessary to make some of the darkest darks really, really visible. So for now, I'm just going to put on a delicate wash of this brilliant purple. As you can see, it's very dilute. And of course it'll dry even paler. So I'm looking at my reference image and just roughly placing the colour. I'm going to leave some of the paper unpainted because it is actually white. The part of the flower is white in parts, or a very delicate hint of pink. It's quite hard, isn't it, sometimes to leave some of the paper unpainted, because we sort of feel the need to fill everything in. That's quite normal. Right, but I think that's enough of the pale pink there. So I'm just going to tip it and let that all run. You can see that sheen now. That's perfect conditions for dropping washes in. Nice and subtle, letting it all blend. I spin my board 360 degrees so that the paint sort of goes diffuse into the paper. Okay, I've got it back the right way around now. Okay, I like painting upside down because it helps my right side of my brain switch on. And that the right side of your brain sees tones and colours and shapes a lot more readily than the left-hand side of the brain. The right-hand side of the brain doesn't care what you're painting really. It doesn't have to name the shape or name the object. So you're free to actually paint the thing as it really is. You get past all the symbols that you've used all your life for what a flower should look like, or whatever. Say you're painting an apple, well, you've got symbols in your mind of what an apple would look like. And so if the apple in front of you is slightly distorted, a different perspective, your left brain doesn't like that, and it will fight with you and try and make you draw it in a way that it doesn't exist. So I turn my painting upside down sometimes to get this different perspective, of the truth, actually. You see the thing as it is. You don't even need to know what it is, but you just draw it and paint it as you see it. It's a sort of honest way of working. So I'm dropping in this colour now, which is permanent magenta. So it's just along the darker continuum of this sort of purpley hue. And let's have some of it in there. Some of the paint is running into adjacent areas, don't worry about that. So see, that's gone hard there. So I've got a hard line. It's gone a bit too dry. So I've got a hard line. I'm just dropping in colour. And in my mind all the time I'm thinking, okay, I just want to make sure there's contrast between light and dark so that the petals appear separate from each other in places and they overlap in places. Right, so I think I'll have a highlight on this petal here. So I'm lifting out a highlight with a thirsty brush, so really moisten your brush very thoroughly, then dry it on a flannel. And then we'll lift out this shape of this lovely curved petal here. Yeah. So that sort of separates it from the one that's underneath there. And then that has bled a little bit too far in there. I want to keep a little crisp white line. There's a bit of a bend, a little, it's curving back on itself, this part of the petal here. And I want that to stay lighter. And as I lift my brush off, I sort of press the brush down hard like that for the lift, then I lift it off very gradually like that. So it gives me a tapering line, a tapering edge. So it's good to just experiment with holding your brush in different ways and trying different brush strokes and lifts with it. This is seeping back in now, so I've got to keep pressing this to maintain that shape. Okay, so let's drop in a few more juicy washes of colour now, perhaps some more, because I've got the delicate under washes in now, some more of the brilliant purple, but in a stronger mix, a more pigmented mix. I think we'll just drop some in. I'm working from the tip down to the base there. Right. Okay, I think that's all the wet into wet I'm going to do on the flower. You've just got to sort of leave it, have this in between sort of stage. It's a bit of an ugly duckling stage, because the next stage will be to dry the flower, and then we put in some wet on dry marks and passages of colour, which will soften, and that will hopefully delineate the petals a bit more. But this soft veiling, I like that to happen, let it happen, while it's all still moist, and even to the degree of, dropping in your green sort of buds and petals and letting them bleed up into the colour of the petals as well. Doesn't matter, it all looks really nice. So I'm just dropping that on. This has gone dry, as you can see now, so I'm getting a hard edge with that. I should have painted it a bit sooner. Let's go for a stronger green for some shadow on this right hand side. Let's put some shadow there. I'm not worried about the twigs so much, it's simple enough to do. Okay, so I'll just taper that off because that's jumping out at my eye now as I'm working, and I don't like that. Okay, right, so one more thing, let's have a little extra shot of pink for this little bud that's just emerging from that part, and that will bleed into that nicely. Okay, so I'm going to leave that dry, and then leave it dry naturally, and then come back and do some darker patterns on the petals. Hi, welcome back. So the magnolia is totally dry now, lovely and bone dry. As you can see, it's a lot paler than it was, but I've managed to maintain some of these white highlights that I lifted out with a thirsty brush. So we've got a little bit of form already there to help us. If at this point, before we start doing the dark tones, you can't see where your leaves are, I'd recommend just redoing some of your outlines, and just for learning purposes, so that you can see where everything is before you let loose with colour. It just makes it a lot easier to place your darks when you can see which petal is in front of which petal, and so on. Okay, all of this is one petal. That's the sort of bulge of the back of it, and then the sides are sort of curling back like this. So that's going to be a shape I'm going to try and explain a bit better with tone in a minute. Okay, so I've got my lines in there now. So again, I'm going to turn it upside down. If you are trying to kickstart your eye into seeing better, if you're just beginning in art, looking upside down really does help you to see things in a different way, in a fresh way, and sort of starts training your eye to look more deeply and a bit more abstractly at things. Okay, so I'm just going to start putting in some darks now. So this is just a dilute wash of brilliant purple. So in here, in this sort of like crevice between these two petals, there's quite a dark area. So I'm moistening it a little bit with this pale brilliant purple, and I'm going to drop in some dark permanent magenta, take it right down there. Let that flood up. I'm getting a tide mark there now, you see, so I'll just use a moist brush and just rotate into that, take it to the white tip almost of the petal, and then if it floods up, we won't get a hard line. So let's go for some darker marks again. So permanent magenta, and I'm going wet on dry with this one because I want a real contrast in colour. And I'll show you another way of softening, just adding a bit more of that in there automatic. So if you rinse your brush now, rinse that size 3, just flick it and you've got a little bit of moisture in the head. Then if you just start painting a little bit away from the edge of that purple colour and moisten an area, then if you touch into that, you get this soft bleed. So that's one way of softening and blending again. So I'm going to rinse again and just moisten a little bit more of that area, just so that if the bleed creeps up that far, it'll still land in moisture and it will give me a soft bleed. So in here is quite a dark passage. I've added a little bit of sap green to my brilliant purple and permanent magenta mix. So this is quite rich, two complementaries mixed together, and really dark sort of tone there. I'm just going to pop some of that in the base there and back into that slightly moist area of the passage I just darkened. So this one I'm going to add some moisture to it so that it bleeds up a bit more softly. So it is obviously darker in the base there. Now that's not softening as well as I'd like, so I'm going to rinse my brush again, flick it, and I've got some moisture there, and I'm going to just swoosh it back and forth to unify it and help it creep up a bit more. You can go back in and do this with watercolour as long as you provide for a bleed that might creep a bit higher than you expect. By doing what I'm doing now, just moistening way past where you think that colour is going to creep up. And then you get these bleeds. So I'm just going to tip that and then show it to you the other way around for a second. The colour on this looks really flat. In reality, it's really quite bright purple. I'm just going to turn my light off. Ah, that's better. That's better. Okay, so that's a bit truer. It's still more brilliant in real life, but obviously the camera is what it is. So let's pop a crease in there now in between these two. So this is wet on dry with a strong dark permanent magenta, brilliant purple and a touch of sap green. And you let the colour explode up like that. And you can put a few little veins in, you know. I'm going to put a few in there now. In this petal I just did a few seconds ago. Just irregular placement of veins. You don't want them too rigid, you know. I mean, unless you're doing a botanical study, which is a different style altogether. Right, so now we need to come into here a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of, I'm going to try something out, a little bit of Winsor orange to this mix, because I want this to come forward. This is at the front of the flower, this petal, so why not, let's just introduce a little bit of orange in there. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to drop some warm orange in some of these creases as well. And quickly I need to, shouldn't hang about now, is just moisten that up. Rinse your brush often. I'm going to carry this up and do a sort of tapered effect there. I'm letting it bleed in places. A bit darker there. And then I'll drag down some hard lines now, so wet on dry on this particular petal. So I like the orange effect there. In fact, I might drop a bit more into one of the other petals. So let's get some more orange, just a little bit more dilute so that it'll flow up into the purpley colour. Just drop some of that in there. Yeah, looks okay. It just gives a little bit of, you know, zip, a bit of interest. And let's have a bit more there. Okay, so I've got a little bit of bleed going on in there, just I quite like that. So let's get on now with this petal here. I'm going for dark now, and I'm running it into this one, as you can see. So this is all bleeding together. And it's going to be, I'll take some of this dark down into the green sort of twig part. going to have it really dark on that curve and taper it away, then moisten my brush again and just touch in with a moist brush and let that pale away. I'm just going to use a moist brush to soften all of that up, and I'm dragging a few moist marks across that stump where the plant, the flower is attached to the twig, just to make that join a bit softer. So let's go in dark again now for the base. So permanent magenta, some brilliant purple and some sap green. Very dark now, back in there, and I'm going to go under there with this really rich dark purple and take some of it over there as well. Just letting all of the, where these petals all group at the base, and really letting rip with a lot of strong colour and dropping in a few dark accents here and there. Okay, I'm starting to get backgrounds now. Can you see them? These backgrounds here. Personally, I don't mind them in a botanical study, but if you don't like them, you can just come in with a moist brush, as I've got here, and again, just swoosh them up. Rinse your brush often in clear water and take that moisture right to the edge of that petal, and then again encourage some more of it up. You're just redistributing the moisture, and then the background will diminish a bit more. Okay, personally I like that background there, so I'm just going to leave it because I think it looks quite nice. Alright, so what else? Let's get some purple in this petal here. I'm just going to leave a millimetre of unpainted petal there, just for a bit of contrast. And then I'm going to drop in a much darker streak and make it bigger in some areas, fatter there, narrower here, just to give that petal a bit of definition. Let's have some more just broken veins now here and there. I don't want to overdo these. It's coming now. Right, so I'd like this to be a bit darker here, so this mix again, the permanent magenta and some sap green, and again I'm just avoiding a tiny little millimetre there of the petal, so that those two don't bleed in, just so that it separates this petal from the sort of bulge under there. Okay, so see how it's coming now. Right, I think, you know, you can go on and on and on, but I think I'm quite happy with it. I just want a stronger dark in there, so let's go much stronger permanent magenta. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to mix in burnt sienna with that and see what that gives me. Right, so that's that rust colour with our permanent magenta. It's a lovely rich colour there. Sometimes you just need to push things over the edge, you know, especially if you're doing a little test. See how it goes. You've got to take a risk sometimes. And if you're doing a small thing like this, it's not such a huge risk, is it? It's not as if you've got a full-blown painting on the go. So if I turn this upside down now and zoom in, so look at that. I feel as if there's enough contrast in there to say magnolia. It's not a botanical study. It's been done quite quickly, but overall the effect is pleasing me. So, I mean, the twig would be done just simply in sort of greens and whatever. So I'm just going to let that dry completely, And then I'm just going to show you one more thing that I like to try and do, just to take a few little risks. But we'll let this dry completely now. Hi, back again now. I'm trying to get this colour true on the camera. It looks slightly greyed, but in reality it's got a lot more sort of fuchsia and pink tone about it. It's bone dry now, so I'm just rubbing out the pencil lines, because that always makes an improvement. Okay, so just get rid of those. As you can see, I'm even rubbing them out within the painting itself, because the graphite tends to sort of float to the surface, and you can get rid of quite a bit of it, even though you think, oh well, it's in the painting, but it's floated to the surface, so you can get quite a lot of that off if you wish. I'm just taking those, especially the outside ones, taking those pencil lines away. Okay, so I've got this painting now, which is predominantly, you know, pinks and oranges and magentas. So to contrast that, I'd like to add a little bit of sort of turquoise blue just on the tips of the petals, to sort of suggest, you know, cool blue light coming from the sky. So this can be a nice contrast. I'm just going to do it very, very subtly, quite dilute. So this is a dilute cerulean blue. Judging it is, you know, a matter of practice. I know this will dry a lot paler, so let's try that. So I'm just going to go in for the tip there, and maybe a bit of that one, and some of this one, and a little bit of this one, and streak down, so a bit there, and hopefully that just gives it a little bit of interest. I've got a moist size 3 brush here now, just to sort of blend things down a little bit more if I feel they're a bit hard edged. I don't want to over blend it, because I want these marks to be, you know, what they are, just placed sort of quite impulsively. And I think that'll do, that's enough. So I hope you've enjoyed this demo. One more thing that I like to do is just get a little bit of spatter on the painting. Some people hate it, some people love it. But when I'm doing these experimental tests and things, I'll do them. There's a bit of green going in there as well now, so sort of a dulled violet. And I'm just going to, you know, tap the brush like that. Okay, and that's finished. So I hope that's been of use to you. Thanks for watching.